Good afternoon, my name is Olga Atamanova and I want to thank everybody who joins Ukraine Media Center Ukrinform both in this studio and virtually. It's day 342 of the full-scale invasion of the Russian aggressor in our land, and today we will be talking about the situation in Kharkiv region. Joining us online is Oleh Syniehubov, the military governor of Kharkiv region. Good afternoon, Mr. Oleh. Good afternoon. We know that in Kharkiv region and Kharkiv itself is being constantly shelled by the occupiers. So if we may start with the results of such latest shelling, give us a couple more comments. There were no strikes on Kharkiv within the last day. However, there were artillery strikes and MLRS shelling, as well as strikes with L-300 on Vovchansk, Kupiansk, and the area around them. The enemy keeps shelling the settlements along the border, and in the same way in Kupiansk area, because the front line goes along there, and we and it's about 15 to 30 settlements that suffer on daily basis from enemy strikes. One person died and one was injured due to such shellings yesterday. Also, there was a recent missile strike on a residential building, the apartment block in Kharkiv. One section was completely destroyed. The rebuilding works are in progress. The emergency works are underway. We reconnected heat, water, and power supply to the sections of building which were not destroyed, where people can still reside. And we do the expert research of the destroyed part to understand if it may be rebuilt. Mr. Oleh, we understand that in Kharkiv region, just as well as in other regions of our country, the power grid suffers the missile strikes. So what's the situation with the power supply in Kharkiv region? What is the schedule of rolling shutdowns? Yes, our power grid is severely damaged. The energy generating facilities are damaged. It's our critical infrastructure. Along with the rebuilding, we have to live under such conditions, and we are a part of overall of joint Ukrainian grid. We have limits allocated by regional energy supply facilities. We don't have emergency shutdowns. Thanks to our armed forces, we have 12 turns, and average statistics for the household is four hours of shutdown per day. With the count of the limits that we have, the power is being distributed evenly along the day. As to the deoccupied territories, what's the situation over there? I cannot help asking. Now that our banner is above those areas, what was the progress of rebuilding there? What are the main challenges we're still facing there? Well, in terms of power supply and critical infrastructure, is the first requirement that comes from the settlements which were liberated a couple of months ago. Now the power supply is reestablished in 80% of the territories, and gas supply is reestablished in 85% of the territories. In the northern parts of Kharkiv region, it was pretty difficult to reestablish the power supply because the territory is densely mined and there is no other way. There's no way around those minefields. So the units of state emergency service had to work in extremely difficult conditions because now it's winter and it, diplomatically saying, complicates the access to those explosive devices. and now it was more than 51,000 explosive devices diffused all around the area, but there is still a lot of work to be done, and it depends. And this is what the speed of reestablishment of power supply depends on. We hope to reestablish the power supply 100% in the occupied territories within the next month. As soon as we reconnect the power supply, we reestablish the operation of local governments, national police, banking system, payments, and so on and so forth. And obviously water supply, which depends directly on electric power supply. And for the time being, we can state that the territories which are not under enemy fire at the moment, we already coped with all the challenges there, and the life gets back to normal, even regardless very difficult humanitarian situation. We still have to deliver the food products and household chemical products there. We do it with the support of Red Cross and other international partners, foreign partners, and the United Nations. Well, talking about the movement of people from or to Kharkiv region, what is the dynamics that you observe? Are people leaving or coming back? Well, a couple of figures. We have about 450,000 internally displaced people. It includes both Kharkiv, the city of Kharkiv, and the region itself. The population of Kharkiv is now 1,100,000 people. After the beginning of the invasion, it was about 300,000 people in Kharkiv in total. Now people are coming back. Well, the picture is different, but people are coming back to those areas which are relatively safe. Why I'm saying relatively safe? Because S-300 rocket can actually reach any district of Kharkiv, and the time of arrival is about 30-40 seconds from the launch. Talking about such settlements as Lozova, where we performed evacuation when the part of the region was occupied, temporarily occupied by the enemy. It was about 10,000 people there. Now we can say about 60,000 people. Well, the situation with population depends directly on the intensity of shellings in those territories, but we keep emphasizing that, for example, the evacuation is needed from Dvorishna because it's really dangerous to stay there. The same situation is with Kupiansk because there is a constant threat of shellings. Mr. Oleh, there is another topic that Ukrainian society is interested in. I'm talking about collaborationists and traitors. We see that now there is a lot of people who call the fire from the enemy. Do you have coordination with the law enforcement agencies, and how do you help them? How do you assist them to identify such traitors in the occupied territories? Well, I will start with the fact that when the deoccupation started, when we liberated our territories, when they were getting back under the Ukrainian flag, so there was a demand for justice from people who were under occupation, and our duty as the government is to satisfy that demand only within the legal field, within the law. And we have fully coordinated teamwork with Security Service of Ukraine, with National Police of Ukraine, and with State Intelligence Bureau, State Investigation Bureau, so not to leave any effect of collaboration beyond our attention, and the evaluation of such actions of any such person who is being suspected in such activities, it will be provided by relevant agencies such as court. 1 2 1 2. Are you hearing us? Well, yes, I'm hearing you. We have questions on the floor. Dear colleagues, please introduce yourself. Good afternoon, Irina Mamshur, Ukrinform. A couple of details, if I may ask. You were telling about the internally displaced people, the movement of population within the region. So I wanted to ask if you have any statistic data. How many people still remain in Kupiansk, Vovchansk, and Dvorichna? I mean, those settlements, they're being constantly shelled, which are located along the front lines and the border with Russia. How many people remain there? Is it still a big number of people? Do people keep coming back there after the occupation, for example, to Kupiansk and Vovchansk? And are there any children? And if so, how many children are there? Thank you for your question. One of the tasks of the full-scale deoccupation of Kharkiv region, it was the reestablishment of operation of government agencies and government bodies as military administrations, and in all such territories, this institution is created, and the heads and commanders, the governors of such administrations are appointed according to the resolution of the President of Ukraine. And talking about Vovchansk, Kupiansk, and Dvorichna, we clearly understand the number of children and adults remaining there, and we continue communicating our message about the necessary evacuation from those areas. Unfortunately, people do not really wish to leave from those settlements, and they only do so when their households are not fit for living anymore. And as to the children, it's a different area of work, because we clearly understand that first of all, we have to provide them with the education services, which was, and within this framework, we provided more than 7,000 notebooks, Chromebooks, tablets for children and teachers to provide the online education, because education is about the future. So no matter the conditions, we have to continue educating our children. But talking, say, in percentages, how many children still remain in those dwellings, for example, comparing to 100% that were living there before the beginning of full-scale invasion. Well, look, we have 29 settlements which are still temporarily occupied by the enemy. There are still 2,000 people living in Kupiansk, including children. If before the full invasion it was about 20 to 30,000 people, we can draw our conclusions and count the percentage. Talking about Dvorichna, about 50% is under occupation and 50% is under constant shelling. So we have 20% of the population remaining in that area, and those who stay are most elderly. Well, and the second question is regarding the rebuilding of Kharkiv region. What was done before the new year, I mean, in terms of residential buildings and apartment blocks, how much did we manage to rebuild before the new year, and what are the plans for this year? Do we have funds allocated for that purpose? And if you can give us any figures, how many apartment blocks are planned to be reconstructed this year? Well, first of all, as about the big-scale destruction and damage, well, unfortunately, there is a large scale of destruction in Kharkiv region, more than 18,000 installations in total, including 8,000 residential buildings and blocks, 4,000 apartment blocks, and 4,500 are private residential buildings. We focused our attention before the new year mostly on reconstruction of critical infrastructure to ensure the reestablishment of power supply, water supply, and heat supply, specifically during winter. But at the same time, we implemented a number of projects for reconstruction of apartment blocks, for example, in the city of Izum, so people could come back and they could use their households. And part of those projects were implemented thanks to the international donors, international humanitarian missions who continue to operate in our region. We implement a number of projects through President's program United 24, and we have plans for a construction of more than 100 schools in Kharkiv region, and the total number all around the country will be 150, and you see that the substantial part of them are located in Kharkiv region. This year we will focus our attention on reconstruction of residential blocks, residential buildings, but we will still need to find out the amounts allocated for reconstruction, including those by international donors. But because even the procedure of project development, it costs something, and with the count of that big scale of destroyed buildings, it will be a very significant amount, and we cooperate with President's office and with the government, and we plan our activities gradually on each phase. But for this year, we plan to reconstruct the residential buildings using the funds of international donors, the state budget, local budgets, and United 24 funds as well. Mr. Oleh, thank you very much for joining our broadcast. Dear colleagues, I'm reminding you, joining us was Oleh Syniehubov, the military governor of Kharkiv region. Our team is working on preparation of the schedule for tomorrow. Bear with us, trust in our armed forces, and glory to Ukraine.